Hi folks, it's Andy. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. We've got some fantastic questions for you today. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into these. We've got quite a lot actually taken from around different places. Some of them were sent to me directly, some from comments on YouTube, and some from the Kendo Show Early Access group. If you're not in the Early Access group, there's the link down below. It's free to join. You should be in that group. It's a really good group to be in. Yeah, it's good. So before we jump into them though, don't forget, if you do like the videos that I put out, if they bring you any value whatsoever, you can support the channel. An easy way is to pick up a t-shirt. This is a great one. It's to show it every week because it's the only sample I've got to hand. I've got some others somewhere around the place, but this one says Keizoku chikara nari. It's one of my favorite sayings. Perseverance is power, and they're like down below and stuff from the Teespring store. They're not directly from us, and of course you can support us by shopping at KendoStar.com. That's my website that sells amazing, fantastic kendo equipment. We even sell stuff like this. Is a great teniguri that we have. This is the official KendoStar teniguri. It says Issho Kenmei. It's our business motto. Kendo is life, followed by the hashtag Kendo is life. That's a hashtag I actually started some years ago. It's now, I was checking it out on Instagram the other day. There's like 11,000 uses now of that hashtag. So yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, let's get into these questions anyway, and let's have a look. Hello Andy, I have a question for Kendo Rant. I'm a member, if I remember correctly, sorry, you were once talking about self-assessment and self-improvement, and that we should always have some improvement points that we focus on during keiko, which are our own improvement points, in addition to what the sensei is talking about. Yes, I did talk about that. So the question that I have is, how do we know if the self-assessment is accurate enough? And if I notice that my tenuichi should be better and I focus on practicing that, when do I decide that it's improved? How do I know that I am doing it properly? Maybe to me it looks like I am doing great, but maybe the reality is that it isn't that good. Also, when do I switch the focus to something else? How do I make that self-assessment plan journey more structured and not focus on random things each keiko, ending up without actual improvement? How do we do self-assessment properly? Do you have any suggestions about this topic? Thanks. So fantastic question. So I've talked about this before. You can't just rely on your teacher to make you improve at Kendo. You really have to take it upon yourself to self-assess as you go along about the things and the points that you need to improve on, together with the advice that you get from your sensei. Now, how do you do that though? How do you know that it's working or not? Well, there's a few ways. First of all, one thing you definitely should do if you can is try to record yourself, or try to get some sort of footage of your own practice and review that and compare it to what you've been looking at in your Mitori Geiko. Mitori Geiko is your watching practice, which I'm sure you're doing. Where you watch kendo videos and you try to learn from watching and compare it and see what's different, and that will give you some sort of judge as to where or how effective you've sort of been with your own self-assessment in terms of your own practice. Also, to be honest, the other thing is that you never really stop working on these things, and you can't. Sometimes some aspects of your kendo are worse than others, so you have to focus on them more so than other things. But it's never the case that you've perfected any of the aspects. So you're always working on all aspects all at the same time, which is really difficult because you're kind of spinning plates in a way where you're trying to balance everything. So different aspects of your kendo require different amounts of attention throughout your progress. And like I say, the only real way of doing that is by being really critical of yourself as you practice. And with experience, you will also be able to make that sort of judgment. But you have to be really honest with yourself as well, and really ask yourself, was that really good enough? Was it really good enough? And how can I do it better as you go along? So it's not like you can just make a plan and say, right, for the next 6 months, you can do that. You can say, right, for the next 6 months, I'm going to work on my tenuichi. But you mustn't do that to the sort of abandonment of everything else. And then you need to review after that 6 months what progress you've made. I think that would be a really good way of doing it. For example, say you do set yourself a time frame of say 3 or 6 months to improve your tenuichi, and then every practice maybe make a recording and then review the first recording against the final recording after 6 months and see if you've made any progress or if it still looks the same. And if it still looks the same, then you need to try to think to yourself, well, what is it that I think I've been working on, and how is that not quite translating through to my Kendo? And if you need help with it, ask your teacher's advice, and I'm sure they'll help you. Next one. Hi Andy, in all your years of practicing in Japan, did you ever witness a student get kicked out of a dojo? What does it take to get kicked out of a Japanese Kendo dojo? No, I never witnessed that. Never seen or heard of that, to be honest. You'd have to do something pretty bad, I guess. Same as anywhere else. It's nothing to do with it being a Japanese Kendo dojo. You know, if you did something that was really bad, like a crime or something, then yeah, you'd probably get kicked out. But I've never seen or experienced that, so it's not something I can give much more on than that. Next one, how long is a training session in Japan? 60 minutes, 90 minutes, longer? How many times a week? A standard dojo is open in Japan. Is it a few days a week or 7 out of 7? Most dojos, most local standard dojos, not including like universities or police dojos or schools, like your what they call a machi dojo, a town club, which is where lots of kids tend to practice. They usually practice 3 times a week. And they often have extra practices as well, especially if they're quite a serious competitive one. So sometimes they might practice 4 or 5 times a week, with 3 being the kind of regular practice where most people are expected to attend. And then maybe just the kind of the more serious ones, the extra couple. Adults don't tend to have that though. For adults, they just go to mainly the 3 times a week. The practices are usually for 2 hours, sometimes more, sometimes a little less. But adults don't normally practice for that long. Adults normally only teach and then join the jigeiko. So, you know, like I would, like at my kids' club, where my kids would practice and I was a teacher at, I would go there for 2 hours, but for the first hour and a half I was mainly teaching, and then it would only be the last 20 minutes or so that I'd actually put on my boga and practice with the kids. I'd have to go to other practices to get my own practice, so yeah, it's a bit of a different situation. Next one. Hi Andy, if doing RIT today, is there a proper posture to take or shape of the hands one needs to make? If so, what is it? If not, what would you recommend one does? So when you're doing RIT today, you should stand in the Shizentai posture, a lot like I've done in the video for the Kendo 0 to Shodan, the very first episode. You stand in the Shizentai posture with your back straight, shoulders back, head straight, neck straight, and your hands casually by your side, but with your fingers together neatly. Okay, don't let them spread out. Okay, and when you do RIT today, you move forward just from your hips and your hands stay by your side, basically on your thighs with your fingers together. This way, okay? Quite straightforward. You don't need to think too much about it, but just try to make it look neat. Next one. Hi Andy, all KendoStar Boga comes with the men tied Kanto style. Is there a reason that there's no option for Kansai style? So I've talked about this before. This term Kanto style and Kansai style, I never heard it in Japan. Like, even when I lived in Kansai, nobody called it Kansai style. This is like something I've only ever heard outside of Japan. I've never heard anyone talk of it as Kanto style and Kansai style. I've heard it called, when I lived in Kansai, I heard people call it attaching from the top and attaching the regular way. The standard way to attach it is what you're referring to as the Kanto style, which is where you attach the 2 chichikawa to the 4th bar from the bottom on either side. And that's the standard way. That's the most common way to attach the men himo to the men. It's definitely the best for beginners to learn using that. It takes longer to do the other way, where the what you're referring to is the Kansai style, where they attach the himo from the top. That uses a single longer chichikawa and longer himo as well. And it has to wrap round more. It takes longer to do. It takes longer to learn. It's not a really great recommendation for beginners to do it that way. So as standard, we put everything as this with the standard method of attaching the Himo. If you specifically wanted the Kansai style, we could sort that and arrange that for you. That's no problem. Just drop us an email and we'll hook you up. Next one, I was wondering whether high school students are eligible to participate in the All Japan Kendo Championships. If I remember correctly, age and rank restrictions were abolished at some point in the mid-90s, but I cannot recall seeing any high school students taking part. In prefectural championships that are also the qualifying for the All Japan Kendo Championships, the youngest are always university students. Yeah, there's an age limit. You have to be 20 to enter the qualifiers and the All Japan Championships. You can't join the All Japan Championships if you're under 20. And I think that age of 20 is from the date of the qualifier, not the date of the actual championship. So they have to be 20 years old on the date of the qualifier, if I remember correctly. But there definitely is an age limit. You have to be 20 years old. The rank restrictions, though, have been abolished. I don't remember what they were or when they were changed, but there's no rank restriction. You don't need to be any specific Dan rank. But yeah, you have to be 20 years old, which in Japan is, incidentally, the age you're considered an adult. That's when you have your sort of becoming an adult ceremony, the Seijin Shiki. So yeah, that's why. Next one. Hi Andy, recently I was discussing with a friend who was practicing in Canada, and she said that a sensei told her when one is given a hansoku during a shiai not to bow to the Shinpan, which is the opposite of what I've been taught at my dojo. What are your thoughts on this? Well, I'll tell you right after this. So, if you skip the plug at the beginning, there, gotcha. Right. So the question was whether you should bow to the Shinpan or not when you're awarded hansoku. There's no official rule that says you have to bow to the Shinpan or not. Most people do. It's probably better if you do, and it's probably easier for the Shinpan to understand that and recognize that you are aware that you've received the hansoku. You don't have to, but I would recommend doing so. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. You can simply turn to them and hi, sort of thing. You don't have to say anything. Just bow and understand it. Don't, like I say, you don't need to make a big scene of it. Just show them that you acknowledge that you understand that it was awarded to you. Next one, can you go over some good conditioning drills and exercises? Yeah, it's called kirikaishi, and I just did an episode of Kendo Zero to Shodan for it. I know you're talking about like stuff that you would do like at the gym or something like that, but sorry, it ain't going to help you that much in Kendo. Just general fitness stuff I expect, but even then, I'm telling you now, I could take like a super fit track and field athlete, probably even like an Olympic level athlete, put them in Borgen in 15 minutes, I think they'd be gasping for air. So the thing about getting yourself conditioned for Kendo, you need to be in shape. You do need to have a good breathing capacity, but you have to develop it through doing Kendo as well, because you use some really specific muscle groups, I think. Not that I'm a doctor or a sports person, like sports trainer person, but that's my experience so far. All right, so yeah, kirikaishi, and if you want something to do at home, practice your ashisabaki and practice your suburi. That will do you the world of good. Next one. Hello Andy, I'm struggling with getting my men himo tangled and somehow double crisscrossed under the mengane when I take the men off during break or when carrying the men to line up. Are there any tricks or other fine points to keep this from happening? Maybe I just need to be more careful, but I keep embarrassing myself. Thanks. So you need to make sure that you're putting the himo inside the men neatly. So what you should do, you take the men off, wipe the inside of the men with your tenuguri, then wipe your face, put the tenuguri inside the men. Okay, you put it inside the men. That will obviously fill the gap that's that the mengane has behind it, and then take the himo, fold them up neatly, and put them inside the men sat on top of the tenuguri, and then they won't fall through the bars. Okay, do it carefully, don't rush, and I think that will be the way to do it. Yeah, so take the men off, wipe your face, tenuguri inside, fold the himo up neatly, and bring them over the futon to inside the men. All right. Next one. Hi Andy, what are your thoughts on leather tsuba for shinai and bokken? Are there any advantages or disadvantages? Right, let me get one so I can tell you about it. Okay, so I'm back. Here are a couple of leather tsuba that I have. These are the ones that I use. I don't know if the camera will focus on them with my face in the shot. That's a sort of decorated one that I've got. And then I've got like a plain one as well. All right, I know that looks like a plastic one. It looks a bit like the plastic one. That's because the plastic ones are imitations of this. The plastic ones are supposed to look like this one. These are the type of leather tsuba that I personally use. I like them. And yeah, my thoughts on them is, yeah, they're cool. They're really durable. They're more durable than the plastic ones. I don't like those ones that you see like that are produced like like outside of Japan, that are made of like normal leather. This isn't leather. When it says leather, these are rawhide leather. This is the really traditional material that's used. It's very, very durable. It's very hard. It's solid. Yeah. But because it's rawhide, it's less likely to break than like plastic sometimes shatters with use. I don't really like those ones that use the kind of brown leather, like you see on like leather jackets or leather chairs and stuff. The sort of stitched up ones. I don't like them. For me personally, I've not got a massive issue with them. They look kind of heavy. I just think they look a little bit like what's the right word? A little bit too Western for me. It's like the kind of it kind of reminds me of like the Wild West kind of cowboy boots and Stetson hats and stuff like that, and like it doesn't fit in with the kind of Kendo aesthetic for me personally, so I don't use them. I use the traditional ones that are made in Japan, like these. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Next one. Hi, I'd like to know what might be the reason behind differently coloured parts of a referee's attire. Is there any reason for that or a hidden meaning? What are the correct colours? I've noticed that European referees tend to wear charcoal jacket with grey pants, whereas the Japanese rock a dark navy jacket instead. Also, why a scarlet tie? I imagine that the first ever Kendo referees had to quickly put together some uniform, but what they had at home were just pieces of different suits, and the rest is history. Just a thought. Thanks. No, that isn't what happened. There is a reason for the colours that we use. First off, I'll get into the reasons we use the colours in refereeing in a minute. But you shouldn't wear like a charcoal jacket with grey pants. The rule book specifies that it's a dark navy jacket. And a white shirt, grey trousers, and a red tie, and that's the correct one to wear. You shouldn't wear a different one. You shouldn't really wear the hakama and kendogi either. I've talked about this before too. If you're like filling in for refereeing whilst you're also participating, of course it can't be helped that you would wear the hakama and kendogi as well. But if it's an official tournament and you're there as a referee only and you're not participating in the tournament, you should wear the proper Shinpan fuku, the referee outfit. That should be considered, especially once you get past, let's say, third dan. That should be considered as something you should own as part of your kendo equipment, like a kendogi and hakama. I wouldn't wear a tracksuit to do keiko instead of my kendogi and hakama just because it's easier. I'd wear the correct attire. So if you're fourth dan and above, you should own Shinpan fuku. That's my personal sort of thing. I didn't have one. Now I'll confess. Now I didn't have one when I was fourth dan. At first, when I got my fourth dan, I didn't have one, and I moved to Japan, and I just thought, I could just wear kendogi and hakama. I had that sort of mentality. And then when I was asked to do Shinpan at the tournament, it it was told to me, you know, you do have the Shinpan fuku, right? Like, obviously I should do. And I said, no, I was just going to wear a Kendogi and Hakama. And no, I was required to go and prepare the correct outfit. Because that's what you're supposed to do. Now, about the actual colours, let me just move over to another website to show you. Okay, so here I am on the All Japan Kendo Federation's website. You may or may not have seen this mark before. This is the Kendojin mark that the All Japan Kendo Federation have as one of the two logos that they use. The other one they use, of course, is this one here. That's basically their main Kendo Zen Kennen logo. And this one is, you see this as a badge often worn by referees. And this has got very... it's got very, what do you say, like properly thought out meaning behind the colours that were chosen for these circles. And you'll notice they're the colours that appear in the Kendo referee uniform. There's a white circle, there's a dark navy circle, and there's a red circle. And the description here actually talks about it, how the red circle represents chi, which is knowledge. These are things, by the way, that we talked a little bit about in a video that I did last week called How Kendo Makes You a Better Person. I talked about some of these values, but it represents chi, which is knowledge or wisdom. The blue circle represents jin, which is benevolence and compassion. And the white circle represents you, which is courage. And basically these three things, wisdom, benevolence, courage, wisdom, compassion, courage, all together as one, are what are considered the good kind of seishin, like spirit, I guess, or attitude. For Kendo. And as a referee, this is particularly important, yeah? You must have the knowledge to be able to do refereeing. You must have the compassion or the compassion I think is better, to be able to empathize with the position of the shiaisha, the players, and you must have the courage to make the decision in a split second. And that's what this represents. And the referees Shinpan fuku, the clothing that the referees wear, the attire, represent that as well, and that's why those colors are used in Kendo. So hope that makes sense. Let's move to the next question. Okay, next one. I've watched and shared your lecture on how Kendo makes you a better person. Oh, that was coincidental. I was just talking about that. One of the points you mentioned is respecting your belongings and for the people who have provided them for you. Yes. I bought a Borga set and been unfortunate not to wear it as yet because my dojo hasn't resumed practice in person. How do I maintain and look after it when I'm not practicing for a long time, such as this wretched pandemic? How should I look after and maintain it when I eventually get to practice? So at the moment, as you're not able to use it, don't leave it anywhere damp or where too much moisture can get to it. If possible, I wouldn't leave it kind of packed away in the bag unless you're running out of space. If you're struggling for space, then it should be fine in the bag, but do try to leave it somewhere dry where it's not going to be attacked by mold. In terms of once you're practicing, what you need to do is after you finish your practice, use your tenugui to wipe it down before you wipe your face after the keiko. But then afterwards as well, it's best to use a clean cloth, not one that's soaked in sweat by your tenugui, just to wipe it again, to wipe away the excess sweat that's on the inside of it. And then you need to leave it to dry completely before you pack it away in the bag, and certainly before you use it again. So what that means is you have to leave it to dry before you practice with it again. So sometimes if you're practicing a lot, like if you practice like every other day, sometimes that might mean that you need to consider that in terms of if you've got enough equipment to tide you over, especially with the kote, especially if it's very intense practice. But for the most part, most of us don't have to worry too much with that. However, when you are leaving it to dry, try not to leave it with the mengane facing down. Try to leave it with the mengane facing up so that the moisture doesn't seep down into the membuchi, because it's best to keep that dry as well. And yeah, otherwise that should be fine. Just make sure it's dry before you use it again. Hi Andy, some stitch threads under the left mendare of my current men are broken, probably because I practice Jodan no Kamae and the mendare rubs against my shoulder. I have the men for 2.5 years, and the seller said to me that the time plus the use for this kind of item is enough to produce that kind of results. It seems a bit early to me that it happens. What is your opinion? All right, let's get up this photo so we can talk about it. Okay, so here I am with the photo that you sent regarding the men that you were talking about. This black square here, I think, is where you've covered over probably the branding that was on this. I can tell this isn't a KendoStar model. I'm pretty sure what brand that is actually. I know my stuff. So yeah, I know the product quite well actually. I can tell exactly what kind of men this is, and what manufacturer made it. Look, yeah, I can. What you're talking about here are these small frays in the threads here. 2.5 years, and I think I went back to you and asked you as well, didn't I, how often you're practicing? You said 2 or 3 times a week, and you're only using this men. And if you're doing Jodan all the time, yeah, I'm going to agree with the people that made the men, that yeah, this isn't that unusual for that level of use with this kind of men. If this was like a top grade hand stitched men, then probably you wouldn't be looking at that, especially if it was like a tenzashi men. I mean, you're talking about a massive jump up in price to what this is. I think that's what you would expect from a men of this kind of level and build quality. And I don't think it's like, this isn't like an emergency that this men is like on its last legs or something like that. This should be fine to keep using. But yeah, considering that this is the left mendare, you're always doing Jodan, so it's always rubbing against here. You've been using it for 2.5 years, 2 to 3 times a week, and it's the only one you've been using. I'm not surprised at that at all, to be honest. It looks pretty much what I would expect. So Although like I say, this isn't a KendoStar men. It'd be easy for me to just say, oh, this is just because you bought a rubbish brand. It's not that at all. It's not that. I think this is fair wear and tear, I'm afraid. So yeah, I'm going to agree with the makers of this men in that I think that's what you should expect. Which might not be what you want to hear, so yeah, sorry about that. I do think though, if I'm right in recognizing your name from the Facebook comment, that you have bought another men from KendoStar, so yeah, that was a good choice. And if you rotate that with this one, I think you'll get a much longer life out of it. So yeah, next question. Okay, hi Andy, I'm 56 and I'm returning to Kendo after a 30-year break. Once bitten by the Kendo bug, what injuries should I watch out for? Love the Kendo rants, thank you very much. Great, welcome back to Kendo, that's great, good to know. Watch out for injuries to your calves and to your Achilles tendon. They're the easiest places to injure yourself, especially on returning to Kendo. I don't know what sort of level you were 30 years ago before you took your break. Don't expect to be able to move like you did then. And when you start to spring off from your left leg, especially for stuff like fumikomi, and even doing like suriashi properly is going to start to you're going to start to feel it, I should say, in your calves and potentially your Achilles tendon. So make sure that you stretch them properly. If they start to hurt, take a break. All right. I'm sure your teacher will be accommodating of that. So yeah, that's what you really need to watch out for, I think, in my opinion. Next one. Why isn't Kendo ball a more popular sport? Well, I hadn't heard of it until you posted this question. So I did a quick Google, and I think if anyone else does that, I think it becomes quite self-evident as to why it's not a more popular sport. Next question. Why is Kendo so expensive to start? I jest as I'm saving to buy Borger. Yeah, I know that it is expensive to start Kendo in terms of buying the Borger and stuff like that. And I know you say you're joking, but it is a valid question. Kendo's not the cheapest of activities because, we need Borger to protect ourselves, which in order to be able to do that properly has to be well made and protective. I mean, you could cut corners and buy a super cheap one but just don't expect it to do that. Don't expect it to last a long time and protect properly. But you do need one that protects properly, and you do need one that's not going to break quickly. It does have a sort of high buy-in cost, and obviously there's things like shinai and stuff that are somewhat consumable. You have to replace them reasonably frequently. I get that. But at the same time, there's other things that aren't as expensive as other sports. Most Kendo clubs aren't run on a for-profit basis, so you tend to find that actual practice fees are lower than on other sports, because it's rarely the case that the teacher is making a living from teaching you Kendo. There's certainly more expensive sports out there, or activities. Really, it's an investment, though. It's an investment. It's cheaper than going to university, and it'll certainly teach you a lot. So, yeah, there you go. Think of it as an education rather than as a sport, and then it'll start to all seem very, very cheap. Next one, and this is the last one. Hopefully I made the cut with my question. Yes, you did. My question is about doing a big full strike with Fumikomi. I feel like I can fit in a small strike well timed with my front foot, but when doing a large strike I can rarely get the shinai all the way up and back to a strike by the time my front foot lands. With practice I'm definitely getting closer. I take videos to see if I dip too much and adjust my timing in different elements. But maybe if you could offer some insight, is a common solution to the problem of this type of drill is even worthwhile? Great question. First thing you need to do is go and watch Kendo Zero to Shodan, because I actually talk about this very problem in the striking techniques, I think it's called, episodes. But watch the whole series if you haven't. When you're doing large strikes, right, I'm sure that what's happening here, it sounds to me like you're trying to swing and time your stamp together, and that's not really what you do. The strike and the stamp and almost the follow-up of the left foot should almost all happen simultaneously. But you don't try to leap forward as you lift the shinai. It will not synchronize if you do that. Exactly as you say, your foot will land before the shinai if you try to leap forward as you raise the shinai. Raise the shinai, leap forward and strike. Okay, even if you have to break it down into two, raise the shinai, then leap forward and strike, and I think you will definitely have much more success with that, especially if you're finding it easier with smaller strikes, because it becomes the same sort of principle. All right, so raise to Jordan and then just strike from Jordan, if that makes sense. So raise and then step forward and strike, and I think that will definitely help you with the timing of that Fumikomi. Okay, that's it. Thank you for joining me for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe. Don't forget, you got to click subscribe and ring the Kendo bell. We talked about it last week. We talked about it the week before. I think we talked about it every week now for the last 2 months. Subscribe. Don't worry, it's YouTube. It doesn't mean anything. Kendo bell. You don't ring the Kendo bell, you do not get better at Kendo. It's a proven scientific fact. So go and do that right away. Shop at KendoStar, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.